Hi, I'm Betsy Bosley. I'm the dietitian for the Pathway to Health and Wellness program. Today we're going to start the first video of 8 video sessions highlighting cooking techniques that complement the program. So let's start with breakfast. So a lot of people will grab for convenience breakfast foods, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about these foods and tell you why they might not be the best choices. The first item that I have right here, it's just a convenient oatmeal in a cup kind of dish. And this is actually not as bad as some of the other oatmeals I've seen out there. This one does have steel cut oats, which tend to be pretty good in fiber. But the breakfast cereal, it does have some salt in it. So it has 190 milligrams of sodium, and you wouldn't really get that in a normal cup of oatmeal. So, they're just kind of adding it as a preservative. It also has a lot more sugar that they kind of add to really make it appeal to people. And you probably don't need that much sugar in the morning. The next item I have is this chorizo burrito. A lot of people might get a breakfast burrito from a grocery store or gas station in the morning. And the problem with these burritos is a lot of times they have really high fat meats in them, and they have a lot of salt in the seasonings that they use. So this tiny little burrito is 1,280 milligrams of salt. And when your daily recommendation is 1,500 milligrams, that is way too much to start your day out. And you'll probably notice if you eat a burrito like this, you're going to be really thirsty all day probably because your body is trying to, chill out that salt that you've eaten. The burrito also has about 20 grams of fat. So again, a lot of fat in the morning. And our last meal that we have right here, this is just kind of a convenient little breakfast waffle that a lot of people will put in their toasters. And this does not really give us a lot of nutrition. It's using enriched flour, so AKA white flour, and so it doesn't give us barely any fiber. It's less than 1 gram of fiber per serving. Again, it has a lot of salt that we don't really need, 360 milligrams in 2 waffles. So, it doesn't taste salty to us, so a lot of us would not even realize that that's there, but it is. Anything that's processed like this is going to have more salt than we need. And it's definitely got a little fat in it too. It's 7 grams of total fat. So probably not the best choice. And especially when we will pair it with a sugary syrup. So to contrast these foods, I wanted to talk about some foods that are very similar to these. And I would argue that they're much tastier, but they're also going to be a lot more nutritious. And if you plan ahead well, I think you can make these just as quick and easy as these convenience items that we talked about. So for our oatmeal, we're just going to make steel cut oatmeal, and we're just going to top it with some fruit and nuts. Keep it really simple. And then we're going to make a breakfast burrito that has lots of vegetables and good spices in it. And then lastly, a great weekend breakfast would be some blueberry crepes. And these are going to have some whole wheat flour, some egg whites for a little protein, and they're just going to be a really balanced kind of sweeter option that would be great for the weekends, or, the crepes freeze well for convenient meals during the week. Let's get started. Right here I have some oatmeal, and I've been soaking it overnight to make it go boil really quickly in the morning and just cook a lot faster. You can also cook it in your microwave after soaking it overnight in the fridge. That makes it a lot faster. Or you can even put it in a slow cooker and do that all night. I'm using steel cut oats, and you can also use old-fashioned rolled oats. It doesn't really matter. They both have good amounts of fiber. I just really like the texture of steel cut oats. Because of their texture, though, they do take a little bit longer to cook. So that's why the soaking technique comes in so handy. So you can top it with whatever you want. Today I have some dried cranberries. I think that's really delicious and gives it some good color. You could do any kind of fruit though. Fresh fruit would be great too. And then I have some almonds right here that are slivered, and that's just really great to give a little protein and some heart healthy fat. So you don't have to stick with just steel cut oats. This cereal right here is just called a high fiber hot cereal, and it's got a blend of different things. It's got some wheat germ and oat bran and wheat bran and things like that in it. So if you want to explore, you can go to the bulk aisle of your local grocery store and look at the different grains. And a lot of grains, just like the wheat germ or bran, and just even things like quinoa, are great in a breakfast cereal. They're going to take a little bit longer to cook, so just be ready for that. And on most of the bulk bins, it will actually tell you how to prepare these things. You can also look on the internet if you are curious. If you buy them in bags like the bag that we showed with the high fiber cereal, it will definitely give you instructions. But just be prepared to, prep the night before or put it in a slow cooker because sometimes those do take a bit longer. All right, so now we're starting on our savory breakfast burritos. A big part of having potatoes in a burrito or in a scramble in the morning is cooking them the night before so that they're all ready to go in the morning. And so I just baked my potato the night before for this recipe, and then I just put it in the oven this morning. And so now I have all these crunchy little cubed potatoes. I just sprayed it with a little canola oil, and you could kind of add spices as you desire. I wanted to get some frozen peppers and onions to show you just how easy it is to make this recipe in the morning. Obviously, you can dice or make strips out of peppers and onions from scratch if you want, but this is a really quick and easy option. And I love these peppers because they're multiple colors, so they just look really pretty. This would be great for making, veggie fajitas or anything where you want a lot of peppers and onions. So you're going to warm these up, make them a little caramelized and well cooked. So now we're going to add our black beans, and this is just a no salt added black bean in a can. And it's been drained. This is going to be lots of good fiber. With the vegetables and the beans, it'll be a good way to start out your day, and you're going to feel really, really full. These burritos don't really have that many calories, but because they have so much fiber in them, they really fill you up pretty quickly. So now that we've added these vegetables, we're going to add some flavoring. So what I have here, you could use different flavorings, but I have a Cajun Creole seasoning blend that I really like a lot. But I'm going to add about a tablespoon of our spices. Oops. Okay, I added a little too much. So we'll mix in the spice blend. So while we're cooking these vegetables, we're going to get our eggs all ready. And so I have just, dozen large eggs. And so what I'm going to do to make the scrambled eggs is just separate them. So we're going to use 4 egg whites and 4 whole eggs. And that's just to decrease the cholesterol amount in the recipe. So I'm just separating my eggs here. And I'm just using this little egg separating tool, which is really nice. Keeps the yolk just up here while the rest of the egg white comes down. And sometimes they really don't want to separate. They have separation anxiety. So this will make a lot of burritos. It's 6 servings, and these are pretty large burritos, so I would argue that you can maybe even make 8, depending on how full you want to make them. So 4 eggs distributed between 6 burritos is going to be less than a yolk for each, which is, within the recommendations of the American Heart Association to limit cholesterol to 200 milligrams per day. And definitely when you add milk, the eggs will be a little bit lighter in color, and that's normal. And obviously, since we're doing half egg whites too, it might not be as yellow as normal eggs. I think in a recipe like this, it's probably you can totally just leave out the eggs and just make it vegetables, and that's totally fine. So now we're going to add our vegetables back in. Add the diced potatoes. Okay. We'll mix that in. This looks so good. And so these are ready to put in our tortillas. Okay. So we'll turn off the heat. So I've got a whole wheat flour tortilla right here, and we're just going to fill it with our veggie blend and our beans and our eggs. And I love all the different colors. The healthiest plates are the most colorful plates. Okay, so you've got some good filling in there, and then you can top it with whatever you want. I've got some avocado here, and I really like avocado. It's a really good heart-healthy fat, so we're going to put some of that in. Gives it some pretty color too. And then we've got a little bit of cheese. And I think in a lot of breakfast burritos, or just burritos in general, they just way overdo it on cheese. You don't really need a lot to make a delicious meal. And I like to get extra sharp cheddar, so it just adds a little bit of that cheesy look to things and some good taste, but without all of the fat. You don't have to use very much. This is probably maybe a tablespoon. Normally they say a serving of cheese is a quarter cup, so that's a quarter of that. And then right here I've got some Greek yogurt, that plain Greek yogurt. It is so useful in so many things in the kitchen. And this is kind of my substitute for sour cream. It's going to be a lot less fat and also has some good, probiotics, that sort of thing. And then right here I've got like a low sodium salsa, and I like to add a little spice to my dishes. So that's what it looks like. And so we'll just roll this up. You can top it with a little cilantro too if you want to. You can kind of decorate it however you want, make it look pretty. So I'm just going to put a little salsa on the top. Maybe you could put a little bit more avocado just to add some color. And this is a restaurant-worthy breakfast burrito, I think. And the great thing about these burritos is you can actually make them ahead of time, and it makes a lot, as we saw. And you can roll them up in some plastic wrap and then put them in bags and put them in the freezer. And you probably want to roll them up a little more tightly than this, put a little less filling. But then they're just ready to go and heat up in the morning, and you can take them with you wherever you go. So I'm going to go enjoy this breakfast burrito, and then we'll be back with some blueberry crepes. See you soon. So now we're going to make our blueberry crepes, and I like these crepes a lot because they have some good amounts of protein in them. They're going to have some eggs, and the first ingredient is kind of a different one. It's going to be a whole cup of cottage cheese, and a lot of cottage cheese tends to be really salty. It's low in fat, but it might be up to 450 milligrams of salt for a serving, and this cottage cheese, it's only 65 milligrams of sodium per serving. The low sodium cottage cheese, it might not be quite as flavorful as a regular cheese or a regular cottage cheese to you when you first try it. But your taste buds definitely adjust a lot as you transition to kind of eating less salt and less fat. And so after a while, you'll be able, to just really enjoy the cottage cheese flavor. Okay, so the next ingredient I'm going to grab is my whole wheat flour, and whole wheat pastry flour actually works really well for cooking. And I just put a half cup of the whole wheat flour in with our cup of cottage cheese. Okay, and so we've got a half cup of skim milk, and it doesn't have to be regular milk. It could be soy milk or almond milk, whatever you prefer. Okay, and our next ingredient is our vanilla, and this is one of my very favorite flavors. It calls for a half teaspoon, and I just kind of eyeball this. You can put more or less depending on how much you like vanilla. I love vanilla, so I add lots of it. And then one of our last ingredients is going to just be our canola oil. And again, this is a good heart-healthy fat that's really good for baking. And so we're going to add a quarter cup. And again, you'll notice our recipe has very little salt. So if you compare this to the Eggo waffles that we were making, it's going to be much healthier, and definitely some more fiber with this whole wheat flour. Okay, and the last thing we'll be adding are eggs, and we're going to have 6 eggs total, and half of them will separate into whites, and then the other 3 eggs we'll just use for the whole egg. So 3 egg whites, 3 whole eggs. And so I'm just going to separate them into my bowl. And again, I'll be using my handy dandy egg separator. There's actually a lot of good nutrients in the yolk as well. There's some antioxidants that are really good for your eyes. So the yolks are not all bad either. They're just, something to be aware of if you're watching your cholesterol. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my immersion blender, and you could just use a regular electric mixer, but I'm just going to mix my eggs all together. Oh, and this really shows how an immersion blender can really make things very fluffy. Okay, so these are totally mixed, and we're going to add that to our flour mixture. Okay, so I'm just going to blend all the ingredients together with our immersion blender. You want to make sure that the ingredients are just blended, but not too blended. All right, and I can already smell that delicious vanilla. It's going to smell really good when we're cooking it. And I'm going to just use my canola cooking spray. Just put a little bit on the pan. And again, I think this is a really great weekend breakfast. If you have a lot of company over, it really feeds a crowd. And I just use one of my measuring cups to kind of ladle out. You want about 1/4 of a cup for each little crepe. And probably can turn the heat up a bit too. There we go. These are going to be pretty liquidy at first. And the great thing about these is you can make them for people, and they seem really fancy and like you couldn't do these very easily at home, but they're actually very simple to make. Okay, so now our crepes, you can see the little bubbles that are on the top, and it looks kind of firm. So they are ready to flip. Ah, they look beautiful. The great thing about these crepes too is they taste, I think they taste delicious on their own. I feel like you don't even have to add butter and syrup to them. And they kind of taste sweet, even though we didn't put any sugar in them. Pretty much the only carbohydrate is the whole wheat flour. So I don't know how they're so magically delicious, but they are. Yeah, I think it's the vanilla maybe. And so yeah, we'll just let them cook a bit longer on this side. They cook pretty quickly once one side has gotten brown. So I made this blueberry sauce using just frozen blueberries, a little bit of sugar, and then some cornstarch and water to kind of thicken it up. And we just heated it up. You could just use fresh fruit if you wanted to, whatever's convenient. I really like adding fruit to breakfast foods like pancakes and waffles because it's going to make it a lot healthier and not as much, added sugar. It's just natural sugar. I think we can just top them with our blueberry sauce. And so we'll just okay. And so there you have it. It's a beautiful, nutritious breakfast that you can be proud to serve anyone in your house. So you see that eating a delicious and nutritious breakfast in the morning doesn't have to be a hassle as long as you plan ahead. We are going to be posting the recipes for all of these 8 sessions on the Pathway to Health and Wellness website. Thank you for watching and hope to see you on all the other sessions.